In my previous videos, I talked all about wiring outlets. Outlets from another outlet, how to switch outlets, even how to switch just half an outlet. But this time, I'm going to actually switch things up and talk about lighting. Coming up. So on my project board at this point, I have two outlets. This one over here is, the bottom one is on all the time. The top one is controlled by this switch. And this one over here is on all the time as well. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to install a new light. And this could be a scenario like you're going to install a new light in your basement or your shop or your shed or something like that. The first step is to determine your power source. You've got to find something, usually an outlet or another switch or something that has power already. And that's my scenario here. I'm going to actually take power from this outlet. So this is the light that I'm going to be using. It is old and it just has two leads on the back, two screws, hot and the neutral. Now this is the wire I'm going to be using. This is 14 gauge 2 conductor wire. Now 14 gauge is for 15 amp circuits. If it was a 20 amp circuit, I would need to use 12 gauge wire, which is thicker and more expensive. So I pulled the wire up through the box, and if I wanted it to be hot all the time, I could just wire it right into this outlet down here. Now why would I do that? Well, if this was, say, a motion sensor light or a fan or something like that that you wanted on all the time, that'd be fine. But in my scenario, I'm going to be putting a light here. So there's no point in putting in a light unless you're going to put in a switch. So I'm actually going to have this wire run through that box, put a switch here, and then power it from this outlet. So you need enough wire to connect whatever device you're going to put here, whether it's a switch or an outlet. And you also need the jacket here on the outside has to come through, so it has to be in the box. And I could always cut that back and if I need any more wire, but I think this is going to be plenty for just wiring a switch. And the ground is wrapped in this little paper, which is sometimes annoying to get off. And then I just take the jacket and the paper and cut them and get rid of those. And to strip them, I use this, I guess, a fancy little stripper. It's a one-handed thing. It's really easy to do. You just click it, and if you don't like stripping wires, these are a good thing. Makes a great Christmas gift. I've had it for years, and I'll put a link to this down in the video description. Now every light is going to be wired a little bit different, but they're all pretty much the same. They're always going to have some place to connect the black and the white. Sometimes they'll have a ground connection as well. In addition, if you have a metal box, you have to ground or bond the box to the ground as well. But since I have neither a metal box and my light does not require a ground, I'm just going to push that one aside and not use it. Next, I'm going to turn my attention to the switch, and the switch is going to get mounted in this box, and I'm going to use a rocker switch here, which works exactly the same way as this single switch does. This one says on and off on it. These are a little fancier, but it does specifically have a label here that says top, and that way you know up is on. At least in this country, up is on. Now the switch has 2 brass screws and 1 green screw. The green screw is going to be for the ground. There's always going to be a ground connection here. And these 2 grounds are going to get connected to that screw. And I'll show you how to do that in a moment. And then the 2 white ones are going to get connected together. It's the black ones that are actually going to be switched. Okay, this is the hot. You always switch the hot. And that way, when the switch is off, this circuit is broken. And when the switch goes on, it's as if these 2 were connected. And it just lets power go right up to the light. So the neutrals are the easiest, and I'm going to do those first. There's many ways to connect them. I could twist them and use a wire nut, but I like to use these Wago lever nuts. These are really pretty cool. You lift up this latch, you put the wire underneath it, and you can see the wire goes all the way in. And then you just flip down that little switch. That tightens it on the wire, and the wire doesn't come loose. So I'm going to do the same thing on this side, and I don't know if that's too long. I'm going to take a look. It's a little bit too long because it's sticking out. So I'm just going to take a little bit, a hair off of that, and then I'm going to put it under here. And now it's in good. I can see them both are in there. all the way to the top, and that's fine. And then I'm going to push these back in the box because I'm done with that. Now let's talk about the ground. Now I can do a similar thing with the ground. I can take the lever nuts like this, or a wire nut, whatever you want, and I could do that and create what's known as a pigtail. And this is a pigtail. It's a little piece of wire that has a little J hook on the end, and I could put that under here, and that would work fine. I just attach this to my switch, the green screw. But there's another thing I can do too. If I have enough, and I do have enough here, I can actually connect these together using a special wire nut. This is called a grounding connector, and what it does is it has a hole in the top, and it allows that to come out the top, this wire. I'm going to push this in, and I'm going to wind this around, and then I put this grounding wire connector on there and tighten that down. And I'm going to screw that down good and tight. Now, what I've got is these two are the hots, and all I'm going to do is connect one of these black wires to each one with a little J hook. Okay, here you can see I've got the two black wires, one on each screw, and I have my ground on the other side. So now I'm just going to push these in, and I'm done with the switch. So now I'm going to turn my attention to this outlet, and what we have here is we have the white on the silver screws and the black goes to the brass screws. I'm introducing a new ground, so I'm going to do the same thing I did before, and I'm going to use one of these grounding wire connectors. All right, here you can see I have connected both of those grounds together. They're under this grounding wire connector, and this wire comes out the top and goes on the ground screw. Now I need to worry about the white and the black. Now what I've done is I've taken the white wire and I've attached it to the extra silver screw here on this side of the outlet. And you can see there's this little piece of metal in between here, this little shunt, I call it, that connects the two screws. So these are actually bonded together just like they were under a wire nut. And I can use the screws to do that. And now it's a little bit controversial whether that's the right thing to do with outlets, but because I'm wiring a lighting circuit above, that's going to be low current draw, so I'm not worried about it. I would absolutely be fine doing it this way. The other way to do it is if I was to take this black wire and this black wire and connect it to a third black wire with either a wire nut or a Wago connector, and then I would put the pigtail on here. But that's in a high current situation like I did when I wired the other outlets. So for this one, I'm just going to put these right on my outlet. Okay, here my wiring is completely done. I've got my grounds connected, and they're connected here. I got my two whites on the silver screws. I have the two black wires on the brass screws, and this is ready to be closed up. Now with my power back on, I put my little outlet tester in here, and you can see two greens. That means it's wired correctly. And now let's test the switch. And you can see the light goes on when the switch is up and off when it is down. That disconnects those two black wires. That's what makes the circuit. So that's perfect. And this one still works fine. So that outlet is switched. The other one is on all the time. Hopefully you found this video useful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Leave me any questions you might have down as comments below, and I will see you in the next one.
If you need shade on your deck or patio this summer, check out Toya Grid Pergola Kits. You source the lumber locally and can assemble this modular system in as little as 30 minutes. Check the video description for links to videos and more information about Toya Grid.